live, everybody, on YouTube, Facebook, and Tim's favorite website on the planet, Twitch. We always have the hashtag cancel Twitch because Tim loves it so much. We are the Bro Plata, and we have a very special guest. We usually talk MMA, boxing, kickboxing. I throw these references out because I love this sport myself, and I call it a sport, everybody. The world of professional wrestling with Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., promoter, manager, one of the greatest wrestlers. You used to be big. How are you doing
I'm still
today?
big. Wrestling's gotten small.
This is true. This is true. And we will talk about your opinions about professional wrestling and your history in the business as well, because it is a fascinating career. You and I met before through your son, Dr. Jerry Jaffe, the world's greatest comedian.
Most highly educated comedian.
Highly educated comedian as well. He does have a vocabulary that is second to none, and I love him for it. And I loved doing his show and Menor at Toth's Place before the end times began. And it's definitely it's an honor, sir, to have you on, and very excited to get to have you on the Bro Plata. Tim, how are you, sir?
I'm solid, Ray. Thank you for asking, man. I had to say this. I said this on Facebook when I posted this video. Ray knows more about wrestling than I do. I respect wrestling very much, and I'm actually really excited to talk to you about the history of wrestling. That's my favorite part of wrestling is the history and like the old territory days and whatnot. But Ray's going to have to carry this one the way I carry every other episode.
This is very true. This is very true. We want to start off. I mentioned your son. Oh, he's gone away. He's walked away for something. I like it. He's already pulling a heel move. It's a nice thing. And he's turning off the light and dimming the background up. We've lost him for a sec. He came back. I like doing commentary. It's a fun thing. Hire me, wrestling companies. Okay. I'm here for you. But Dr. Graham,
message to turn off the light, so I always do what I'm told. Okay.
Well, I like it, sir. I like that very much. But we want to talk about your son. First of all, we know Jerry through comedy, and I want to hear some early Dr. Jerry Jaffe stories of him as a youth or something of that nature, because it's always fun to start off with that, especially.
Well, I don't know what to say about him. He was my boy. I raised him. I always made sure that education came first, but he had to do it. I could only guide him. He won his way through the University of Toledo for his bachelor's degree. He went to Brown for his master's degree and Bowling Green for his PhD. He became a big theater man. He worked in Japan, on New Zealand, and he's also a stand-up comedian, which he has worked from Boston to Los Angeles. I was with him in Los Angeles when he was working, and I think he's a very big talent. And people tell me I should be a comedian, but I shouldn't be, because all I do is steal jokes from other comedians, and I'm told that's a no-no in the comedy business. You got to write your own material, in which I have no imagination whatsoever. I think something's funny, I can tell you a joke, but it's very difficult to be a stand-up comedian. He does a very good job of it, and I'm very proud of him.
Jerry is awesome. I've performed with him a number of times, and actually we were supposed to do I was trying to get with him to do Comic-Cons because that was a big business that he started for himself, which I think nerd comedy is very, very highbrow, because you got to talk about specific things, and it's an interesting his comedy, because it is extremely intelligent. Like, I watch him and I feel like I've gone through like three. Tim, your comedy is fine.
Ray, what are you doing, man? Like, listen, I agree. I love Jerry to death. He knows I love him. But we have Dr. Jerry Graham here. We talk to Jerry Jaffe all the time. We already know all these things about Jerry Jaffe. Why are we talking about Jerry Jaffe? We'll have Jerry Jaffe.
I was wondering the same thing, to be honest.
Right. See, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to deal with.
It's good to talk about Jerry, but let's come to the source now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Anyway, the reason he's here, man. This is what I have to deal with on every episode. This guy. Come on, Ray. Let's talk some wrestling.
All right, let's talk about the early days of your career then. How did you get involved in professional wrestling? Were you a fan growing up back in the heydays? Tim said the territory days. Were you a fan of wrestling back then?
Well, it was Herodotus that said, circumstances rule men. Men don't rule circumstances. I was living in a little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house with my parents with a black and white television set. Watching wrestling on television, I became fascinated. And here's where I used to tell people I never experienced male menopause because from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to be a professional wrestler. All my friends wanted to be policemen, fighter pilots, firemen, this and that, and they end up working good jobs, but not what they wanted to do. I wanted to be a pro wrestler, and it just kept coming back to me. They kept, like Al Pacino says, they kept dragging me back in. I went into the Army. I used to watch wrestling on TV there. When I get out of the Army, I take a job as a truck driver. Who's managing the service station that took care of our trucks? The wrestling promoter in Toledo, Martino Angelo. I mean, it was just meant to be. The circumstances ruled me. He said, come on to the YMCA. There's a wrestling room there. I can train you. And before I know it, I was training, and then I started wrestling. And a few times I got discouraged and quit. And every time I did, some promoter called me and said, why don't you come work for me? I'll give you a better deal. So like I said, this was just like something was guiding my career because I would get, it's a very, very tough business to get into. And I got discouraged like a lot of people do. And every time I did, a better deal came along. The next thing I know, I'm on a huge TV show with, playing in Indianapolis, Chicago, St. Louis. And then I'm partners with Dick the Bruiser in all of Ohio and Michigan, Toledo, Detroit, and Southern Ontario, Windsor, Chatham, all those towns up there. And then, of course, I got to travel. I've been from Kuwait to Hawaii, all over Canada. And it was a great time, a great experience. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. So I said, I don't have any male menopause. The average guy looks back and say, I wish I could have been a pilot. I wish I could have been a fireman or a policeman or something exciting like that instead of an accountant. Or they could be very successful. It has nothing to do with money. It just has to do with what they're doing with their lives. And that is an issue. Any psychologist will tell you. Guys have regrets about why didn't I do what I wanted. I have a friend that's an attorney. I'm not going to mention his name and embarrass him. Very wealthy man. All he does is cry to me why he never became a doctor. So the money has nothing to do with it. But he always thought he wanted to be a doctor, but he never did. So I did what happenstance, circumstance led me into it.
Who, when you watched wrestling as a kid, and who were some of the wrestlers that you looked up to when you would watch on that black and white TV?
Well, there was one wrestler, I think he just got out of Germany to beat the Nuremberg trials, was Hans Schmidt. He was pretty exciting. But there was also Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, who, in my opinion, was the greatest wrestler ever. You go right from the 50s right to today. There never was a guy climbed in the ring that could do things that Buddy Rogers could do because he knew when to do what to do. That's called ring psychology. Like somebody can throw a tremendous drop kick. It can be picture perfect, but you've got to throw it at exactly the right time in the match when it's called for. And this is what most wrestlers have the most trouble learning. They got 3 types of wrestlers, we used to say. Those that make things happen, that was like me. Those that watch things happen, which is most of them, when they see something, they get it. And there's a lot of them that say, what happened? So Buddy Rogers was the absolute foremost psychologist. I remember King Curtis Ayakea in Hawaii. He told me Ric Flair was a poor man's Buddy Rogers. He tried to do the Nature Boy thing, but he could not measure up to Buddy Rogers. And that's my opinion as well.
The Buddy Rogers is a very special case in professional wrestling because he did span the Dumont Network when that was doing big ratings for professional wrestling. I believe they were the ones that broadcasted Buddy Rogers winning the NWA title in Comiskey Park. And then to go into the 80s when he would go to places like the WWF when it became that, and we'll get your opinion on that coming up. But I really do admire that guy because he was the first I would say first guy with charisma on the mic who could also get you into the building. And we were talking off air. That's what really matters is can you get people into the building? And I
Yes.
agree with you. Buddy Rogers is one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. And you just mentioned one of my favorite people, by the way, King Curtis Iakeo. Tell me some King Curtis stories.
I'd be happy to. King Curtis, he played football for the Golden Bears in California. He's from Hawaii. His father was the chief of police of Honolulu. And he hooked up with Mark Lewin.
Mm-hmm.
And Lewin was another genius. I mean, there's few geniuses in this business. The one thing I don't think there ever was a match between Mark Lewin and Buddy Rogers, but if there ever had been, it would have been the greatest match of them all time. But King Curtis was he sat on the beach with Waikiki Beach with me and Lord James Blair's tally ho, and they gave me what I considered my PhD training. They never put a hold on me or grabbed, but they told me, Jerry, when this happens, do this. When that happens, do that. And King Curtis, he was wrestling Mark Lewin once in Toledo. And as soon as that match was over, they were leaving for Texas. So they didn't have anything really to prove except they were supposed to entertain. Usually a match like that will be marginally entertaining because the guys don't want to get hurt because they're going to go to new territory. Their truck was packed. They're going to drive down to Texas. For the first 10 minutes, I was refereeing the match. They just worked holds, this and that. And all of a sudden, Curtis jumps out of the ring, picks up a chair, breaks it, a wooden chair on the side of the ring post, picks a piece of wood, brings it in the ring, beats the heck out of Mark Lewin. Lewin takes it away, beats the heck out of Curtis. They had the people on their seats going absolutely insane the last 5 minutes of the match. And this is what I'm talking about psychology. Both King Curtis and Mark Lewin and Lord Tally-Ho James Blair's all were masters of ring psychology. And
they
this
were.
Is what I'm fascinated with.
And Mark Lewin is another guy I really admire just because of the work he did in Florida as well when he was with Kevin Sullivan and King Curtis both when they did their the family against the Wyndhams. I go deep with my wrestling love here. So it's did you ever did you when you started out were you always Dr. Jerry Graham Jr.? Is the question?
I was Jerry Jaffe.
Okay.
I was Jerry Jaffe, and I wrestled around. I went to I was around Toledo, Detroit, of course, Indianapolis. I went to Nova Scotia, and then I ran into Dr. Jerry Graham, who, if people don't know, he was the biggest thing Vince McMahon had in the '60s. I'm talking about Vince McMahon Sr. He had Vince McMahon's ear. He'd say, "We should do this or that," and Vince would listen to him. And he decided that he wanted to have a son, and none of his kids were interested in wrestling. So he made me his son, and I changed my name to Dr. Jerry Graham. So people would come up to me, and the people around Toledo where I grew up would say, "Hey, your name is Jerry Jaffe." And I said, "Well, the Graham name is like the Gambinos. You become a member of the family, and you take the name." Over in other areas, they'd say, "You used to wrestle name of Jerry Jaffe." I said, "That's because my father wouldn't let me use the Graham name until he felt I was experienced enough and good enough to represent it proudly." So I had stories, no matter where I was at, to explain the saying. I was Jerry Graham Jr. then. And then when Dr. Graham Sr. retired, Dick the Bruiser says, you're too old to be going around with that junior, so you just become Dr. Jerry Graham. Now I'm putting Junior down in case any fans, I don't want them to mistake the big doctor with the little doctor, but later years of my career, I just used the name Dr. Graham because it made sense. I was pushing 40, and you look at a junior, of course, Dory Funk Jr. kept that junior on all the way into his 60s. So I guess it just whatever works for you, but that's what worked for me.
And I mean, what a colorful character Dr. Jerry Graham is. There's the legends of him driving down Broadway in New York City in a pink Cadillac.
Oh, Jerry Graham. They used to say, if you
and lighting
Jerry
cigars.
Story, you're not a wrestler. No, I don't know if they heard that or not. If you haven't got a Jerry Graham story, you're not a wrestler. I have Jerry Graham living in my house. I have Jerry Graham. You want to hear Jerry Graham stories? I could spend the rest of the night giving it. When I wrote my book, Confessions of a Big Time Wrestler, a critic who obviously didn't look at this audio book and listen to the book said I was used as a tool to promote myself. when really the book was about the experiences I had meeting other wrestlers. It had nothing to do with whether I was great or whether I stunk. And Jerry Graham had a good part of those stories. I graded the stories 3 ways. One, absolutely true because I saw it with my own eyes. Credible stories that I got from people I believe to be good, reliable witnesses, and the urban legends of wrestling. And Jerry Graham has all 3. But if you want to hear one, I can tell you a good one if you want to hear one.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, well, Jerry Graham was a big drinker and he was a big partier. And in those days, in the 60s, you used to wear suits and ties when you went places. Well, he's walking down the street in New York, in Manhattan, and he goes by a shoe store. And in the shoe store, they say there's a big pair of golden cowboy boots made of real gold. And he goes in, he says, I want to buy those boots. And they said, they're not for sale. He says, everything's for sale. Let me try them on. He tries them on. They fit him. They're really gold boots. Not only he pays some enormous price, he gets the boots. Now he wears them with a suit and tie, and he goes to the Copacabana, and he tells the band there, every time I walk in, you stop playing any music you're playing, hit me with the spotlight, and play "Oh Them Golden Slippers" while I walk to my table, and you each get $100. And so there'd be Tony Randall, Zsa Zsa Gabor, all the stars would be in there. Nobody pays attention to them. Dr. Jerry Graham walks in, a big light. Oh, them golden slippers. Oh, them. They walk there. He'd sit down at this table, pull out a big cigar, take a $100 bill, put it in the candle and light a cigar with a $100 bill. And the next day in the New York newspapers, they'd say Dr. Jerry Graham did this and that. That was well worth the $400 or $500 you spent between lighting a cigar and the band to get into the papers that way. And he always could do things like that. So there's a Jerry Graham story for you. I have them.
The other I've heard the other stories, the what are legends / some of them are real. There was one, I believe, with his mother, if I remember correctly.
That's absolutely true. It's tragic. His mother died in a hospital in Phoenix, Arizona, and he had a breakdown, and he tried to carry his mother's body out of the hospital. It was tragic. I mean, you can laugh at it, but it was tragic.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's being a comedian. I laugh at like uncomfortable things.
Laughing. I'm just saying that he took a gun out and started shooting at the people that tried to stop him. Took his mother out. They finally got him. He got out of town, but they arrested him in Florida and brought him back. And he went to a mental institution where he recovered. And getting to the comedian part of it, after he got out, he'd tell me, "I've got papers that say I'm sane. Do you?"
Oh, he's awesome. I love him.
That's right.
He's one of my favorite, he's one of my favorite big characters in professional wrestling as an actual person. Did you ever work for Eddie by any chance? Eddie Graham or Eddie Graham?
No, I did not. I've never even met him.
Okay. Because the stuff with him is I've heard this stuff through shoot interviews and stuff like that, through like Kevin Sullivan, who knew him pretty well. That one's a tragic story as well. Luckily you're the one, Graham, that survived. That's the lovely part, because we get to talk to you today.
Well, there's no Graham. Jerry Graham was Jerry Matthew Martin. Eddie Graham was Eddie Gossett.
Mm-hmm.
Superstar Graham was Wayne Coleman.
Yes.
And like I said, it's like the Gambinos. You get the name of Jerry Graham, and you get the name Graham because he gives it to you. I believe his stepfather's name was Graham, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't know that.
He may have been adopted, but it became a hot name, and he picked him. And we thought we were going to go to work for Vince McMahon, but was not to be. I don't have a lot of. First of all, we're talking about promoters when we were off the air, and I did say, and I stand by the fact that when you go by the
number,
makes a good promoter, it's number of tickets sold, money taken. It doesn't matter. This guy's the greatest wrestler, but only drew 300 people. You can say this guy's a bum and he draws 10,000 people. That's it. There's nothing else. And Vince McMahon is the greatest promoter of all time. I'll tell you, I just didn't like the guy, and it's probably not his fault. By his own words in interviews I've heard, he was raised by a single mother in in the Carolinas in a trailer park. He claims to be a victim of sexual abuse. So he probably had it pretty rough when he was a kid. So I noticed his father took care of him, went to military school and stuff. He had things, but to be knocked around like that when he was a kid, if he's to be believed, he is my source. If this is not true, it's because Vince McMahon was not telling the truth. But I saw him in an interview, read an interview, and that's what he said. But he just has no couth. He's not a couth person, but he's a smart person. He knows how to draw money. And I'll give you an example why he fired me. Now, I was in the wholesale meat business for 40 years. I was the biggest, most successful meat man in Northwest Ohio. And when you're in business, sometimes you got a guy that just can't get the job done. You might like him, you might feel bad for him. I always take him aside and say, look, this isn't for you. You know, you're not picking it up and we're going to have to let you go. And I always felt really bad about firing somebody, unless I caught him stealing, but that's a whole different story. But sometimes guys, they just couldn't get the deliveries made fast enough. They couldn't cut the meat neatly enough. They just couldn't. So anyway, when they took a look at me, Vince didn't have to say a word to me. I was good friends with all of his lieutenants, George Steele, Jay Strongbow. Somebody could have taken me aside and said, listen, it's just not what we're looking for. I wouldn't have been happy, but I wouldn't have felt disrespected. The way I was fired was I was calling on some clients from Tyler Meats one day, and I came back to my office, and my secretary had a message that she didn't even understand. She wrote it down. The WWF called, says, don't come back anymore. So I got fired by my secretary. And I just thought, I wasn't happy that I got fired, but I felt they could have. I fired people in my life, and I've never been that crude. So he's just a crude person, but he's successful. And
you hear that a lot about Vince. You hear those things where it's and it's on either side. Really, you just mentioned George Animal Steel. I've seen interviews with him where he's talked about how much he likes Vince. And
Vince was very good to be better like Vince.
Oh, yeah.
He passed away now, but he was a good friend of mine.
I was about to say, what do you have any because his territory stories are way more fun than the WWE ones, because the WWE he actually understood that it was more about the character itself. And to be honest with you, it's correct, because it was one of the best characters of all time. Do you have any George Animal Steel stories?
Oh, sure. One time, George Steele and I, we used to travel together in the Detroit territory. We were on our way to Eastern Ohio, Canton or Akron or somewhere like that. And George liked to keep things interesting. So we'd get on a CB, which were big in those days, and start insulting the truck drivers. And he'd get them so furious. So one time they spotted us. It said Blue Chevy Impala. We were just ready to get off at exit 10, which is Akron, Canton. The truck drivers say, let's pull them out of the car and beat the hell out of them. And I was just wondering what the first guy that pulled George Steele out of the car what would have been on his mind. I mean, even if they had eventually outnumbered us 10 or 12 to 1, would you have want to been the first guy to pull George Steele out of the car?
No. He would have eaten your eyeball if he got the chance.
Yeah. I'll tell you another funny story. We're down in Florida, not in the best of health, retired, and there was a disc jockey down there that was a friend of a friend. Couldn't have George on as a guest. So he said, would you want to come on and surprise George? And I said, only if he has to recognize my voice, because I hadn't seen him in 30 years. So they said, we got a guest, George Steele. It says that you were friends, but hadn't seen you in a while. And I says, George Steele, do you know this voice? He says, is that Jerry? And I said, after 30 years, you recognize my voice? And he said, I'm dyslexic. I've always been. And he says, something that dyslexic people are compensated with good memories. He says, we don't know why, but when I heard your voice, I knew it was you. And he was right. That's
awesome.
Yeah. He said he was so dyslexic. You know, he's a graduate of Michigan State. In his book, he said they gave all of his exams orally. They asked him the questions. He didn't, because he had trouble. But he was a very bright man. And I feel badly. So when he was in grade school, one of the teachers called him stupid. No teacher should ever call a stupid kid should call a kid stupid, even if he is stupid. You should never discourage a kid by saying that. And I just reading that in his book, he never told me that personally, but it was in his biography they wrote. It really upset me that a teacher would do that to a little boy that had a disability, which they didn't understand, and then call him stupid. And he never forgot it. And teachers make an impression on you, good and bad.
That's I've had a run of bad teachers in my life, and I had ADHD as a child. Tim it dealt with Tourette's his entire life. So it's like it's definitely to have that happen and to have him turn into the success story that he did is a great thing. I want to ask you, what when you were in the territories? Well, actually, let's start with this. What was your favorite territory to work when you were
Indianapolis.
Minneapolis?
Indianapolis.
Oh, Indianapolis. Okay, so the WWA under Dick the Bruiser.
And Wilbur Snyder. Yeah.
And Dick the Bruiser, for those of you that don't know, is just one of he is that colorful guy that took the WWA to Indianapolis when it was first in California. He won the world title, then moved back to Indianapolis with the belt. What was it like working in the WWA?
Well, what I like about the WWA is of all the territories I was in, minimum backstabbing. Everybody was friendly. Dick the Bruiser and his partner Wilbur Snyder treated you like a real person. And it doesn't take much to do that. You know, another person was like that was Vern Gagne. He was the only promoter that ever thanked me for coming when I'd go to Chicago or any of his towns. So I started doing that when I was a promoter. I started thanking the guys for coming. And how much does that cost to do that? Makes you feel good.
That is true.
Appreciated. Thanks for coming. And that's the kind of Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder treated me great like that. The other territories, the Sheik's territory, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, Hawaii, places I was in was just terrible as far as backstabbing and this and that. And but that was part of the business. So.
It was, and it's I mean, you hear about those stories of people getting like backstabbed and all this, but what I'm more interested for, like the territories, especially WWA, which was known for this. Bobby Heenan started a few of them.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan started there. He started by selling popcorn and stuff in the concession. He worked his way up from there. Absolutely, success story.
Oh, absolutely. One of the greatest managers of all time. Probably the greatest manager in terms of just entertainment value. And Tim, you know who Bobby the Brain Heenan is, yes?
No, sorry, man.
You don't?
No, I know some of the names you're talking about, man. I told you, man. I'm gonna be the odd guy out in this conversation. It's all right. I like all these stories. It's cool.
I'll tell you, Bobby Heenan was great. I'm not saying anything against him, but there's an unsung manager that you probably never heard of. He was the manager of man I referred to earlier, Lord Blears, Captain Leslie Holmes. He wore a captain's
yeah.
Okay, now true story. Lord Blears was in the British Navy in World War II, and they were captured by Japanese, and they were in a submarine that was above water, and they started shooting prisoners. So he dove overboard and swam 100 yards underwater and came up without being shot, and he stayed in the water till a friendly ship came and picked him up. So he always said that being able to swim underwater saved his life. So one day I saw this tape, and I've heard a lot about Martino Angelo, the man started me in business, was talking about this Captain Leslie Holmes. He always he had the monocle on, and of course a cup of tea while there. And they asked Lord Blears, he says, what's your training program? He says, well, every morning I get up and I swim 100 yards underwater every day before breakfast. He says, what about you, Captain Holmes? Do you swim? Oh, yes, the Lordship highly advises that I swim underwater. So do you swim 100 yards? Oh, no, it'd be presumptuous of me to try to equal his Lordship. I swim 90 and stop. And he was really something. But see, the thing that Bobby Heenan had was the modern age technology where it goes all over the world. People could see him. And that story was not in any way, shape, or form. I don't want anybody coming back to me saying I was knocking Bobby Heenan. I was not. I was just saying there was other talented guys, Wild Red Berry and stuff, good vocabularies, good, but they were always in the territories and you didn't get to see them. Where Heenan and a lot of the guys of Heenan's contemporaries were able to go on national, worldwide cable and this and that, and they were able to showcase their talents better. Ray, you're a wrestling fan. Let's just do an imaginary question I want to ask you. Let's suppose it's back in the 60s and they had the same technology they have today to get the word out with cable TV and all this. How much would a match with Dick the Bruiser and Wild Bull Curry versus the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher draw?
It would You're now making me want to buy a ticket. I mean, if you look at that lineup,
Yeah.
there's
Just let them
there's nothing.
do all their stuff on TV all over the world. People could see it. Then you could have the match in Findlay, Ohio, if you wanted to. But the people would be all over the world tuning in on that match. Same with Buddy Rogers. Same with Dick the Bruiser. You know, all of them. You know, it's Bull Curry and Dick the Bruiser against the Wild Bull Curry and Abdullah the Butcher and the Sheik. Yeah, those were four megastars. Every territory they went to, they drew. And I'll tell you something that Terry Funk told me as a joke once, but he was prophetic. He said, this business would be great if the towns would come to us. Because in those days, you had to get in the car and drive to the town, and the next night you had to drive to another town. You're in show business. It was a series of one-night stands. Well, when the pay-per-view came, that's exactly what happened. The towns they'd go to one town to wrestle a pay-per-view, and all the towns would be watching on pay-per-view. So
Yep.
the towns didn't end up coming to us, and we didn't have to wrestle as much in a year's time. It was the technology is what made Vince McMahon, by the way. He was a great promoter, but part of his greatness was his innovativeness. He saw the value of USA cable and going out all over the world, and he didn't respect the territories. His father did.
Yes.
But and he took over the world. And like I said, I don't have any particular liking for him on the level because of the way, not because he didn't use me. In show business, you know, and wrestling is the red-haired child of show business. Is a red-haired stepchild of show business. Sometimes you just aren't what the promoter's looking for, and you get disappointed and sad. And I would have been upset, but the way I got it, my secretary's reading a note to me. She said the girl called. Didn't even one of the wrestlers, not even Strongbow or Steele or Vince, said, don't come back. And I always said, well, you know, what a low class thing to do to me. And so I want to make that clear. I'm not crying because they fired me. I'm crying because I come up with hundreds. You've heard of people show there's 100 reasons that weren't their fault why they got fired. It's always their fault. It was my fault. I wasn't what they were looking for.
Yeah.
They were looking for obsequious, psychophantic, butt-kissing lackeys, and I didn't fill the bill. So, see, the problem with that was I had the wholesale meat company with my family, and I didn't need the money. It was like a hobby with me, and they like to get these guys in a situation where they like the plantation mentality. You got to work, and if you leave, you're out of work. I could leave anytime, any place. I walked out of Nova Scotia when they screwed me without even telling the promoter. I just took the lousy money he gave me, which I was promised a fee that I didn't get. I got on a plane the same day, and where's Jerry? I came right back I had a job waiting for me. So that may have been one of the reasons why they didn't put me on, because they did like to get guys in a box with Vince was good for that. Where's some high school dropout hillbilly, no excuse, going to make 10, 15,000 a week?
Yeah. And the thing with like Vince too is even now he's sort of, and we can get into modern wrestling now. I mean, I hate to say this, but like, and we talked about this a little bit before we went on the air, was I don't know. They care more about I don't know if you watch South Park. They care more about who's sleeping with who rather than who's wrestling who. And I think back in your day, especially, that's kind of how wrestling was. You sold more of, hey, this guy's wrestler A and wrestler B are going to be at, the Indianapolis Expo Center this Saturday. Get your tickets. Here's how much it is. WWE now would rather have, let's just throw out a modern day wrestler, Edge, talking about how this guy's trying to hit on his wife, and then they're going to have a match about it. And I don't like that. I
don't either.
I'd rather see two guys have a match and make it look good for me and make me care rather than care about the angle itself.
Well, the wrestling it was the world's first infomercial.
Yes.
Back in the 40s, we went on TV. The infomercial, by definition, is a show that's designed. The whole show is designed to make you want to buy something. Like, it's not like a commercial where they go away for 30 seconds or a minute. The whole show is like, buy this. Billy, hi, I'm Billy May. This is the sharpest knife in history of the world. And the whole show. Well, wrestling, they got, as you pointed out, it's exactly the same. I think you may have plagiarized that for me. But anyway, wrestler A beats the hell out of everybody on TV. Wrestler B beats the hell out of everybody on TV. And they say, you can see Wrestler A, Wrestler B at the arena this coming Thursday night. Don't miss it. Be there. And it used to work. And by the way, Buddy Rogers, he had back in the day, it was only $1 to get in, but he'd have 5,000 or 6,000 people at the sports arena every Thursday night. 52. Yeah. When he showed up, he would. That was it. Then he wasn't there. It dropped. I mean, getting back to Buddy Rogers, but that's the way it was. You get two wrestlers on TV, and you want to see them mix it up in the ring, and that's how it was done. Yeah.
So when you wrestled, were there not like hard, long running storylines like there are now? It just
okay. I'll give you yes, there was, but it was different. It wasn't hitting on somebody's wife or knocking their mother down in the mall or anything like that. It would be the matches themselves. Let's suppose I'm going to wrestle Calypso Jim, who was one of my arch rivals when I was wrestling. We have a match, and I would somehow, with the help maybe of my manager or with a foreign object or whatever, I would beat him. And then, of course, everybody would be upset, they'd be mad, they'd say, we got to have a return match. So the match itself was a story, but this time we're going to have the Great Wojo is going to be the special referee, and there's going to be no pulling gimmicks out of trunks or anything. So in this match, we end up going out of the ring, fighting all over the ring. Both get counted out of the ring. Now, how's this going to settle? First of all, Graham won with an illegal object. Now they both fight their way outside the ring. So what we got to have next week is a cage match. This way, nobody leaves the ring, and that's what referred to in programming. In our days, we called it programming. Now they call it storylines. The third match of the program, Graham's been totally disarmed. The other guy wins the cage match. But you got to keep the program going. So one of my friends comes running out of the audience, and we get in the ring and close it shut and hold the door shut, and we beat the hell out of the guy that just beat me. Now there's got to be a tag match. Another guy crawls over to the outside of the cage, gets in, and so then it goes to the fourth week, a cage match. And then that doesn't have a satisfactory ending, so you go to a barbed wire match, which is something that not too many people do. But or they can have a lumberjack match with 10, 12 wrestlers outside the ring, pushing people back in like the old lumberjacks in Western Canada used to do, and so on and so forth. So the matches themselves were the storyline, and or the program, and that's how it did it. It worked for us. Maybe today things have changed. They got to do things differently. They'll still defer whatever Vince is doing. I guess his houses, what I'm reading online, aren't what they used to be, but he's still the biggest promoter in the world. He's just not joined like Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and those type of wrestlers.
I was about to ask, do you think with the advent of the internet and smart fans especially, I consider myself to be sort of in the middle of that. I pay attention to what goes on in the internet community and all that kind of stuff. And it's like Star Wars fans. It's like Marvel fans. It can get very toxic very quickly. But do you think that wrestling can't really make stars now because of the internet, or do you think it's a different way to make stars?
Probably a different way, because the way I look at it, like I said, I'm 73 years old, so I might be outdated. But you take a wrestler, have him start winning all of his matches, and that's how you get him over. Say, for example, Hulk Hogan's the champion. So you bring a big muscular steroid case guy in, have him beat all the top wrestlers in the territory over a period of weeks, and he finally has earned his match with Hogan. Then meanwhile, Hogan's programming is somebody else, because you always got to have something cooking underneath in the undercard. And that's what I used to do. And for what we did, the Bruiser Bedlam promotion was one of the most successful independent promotions in the country, because we had matches in Detroit, Toledo, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, Chicago, Springfield, Illinois, and all the cities in between, a smaller town in Ohio, Lima, Findlay, Akron, Canton. It was just all over the place, and we made money. Then you see on the internet that we went broke. But what happened was we saw Vince McMahon, we could compete. There was room for two promotions. But then when Turner started the WCW, Bruiser and I sat down, we talked and said, there's just no way we can run with these guys They run every 2 months in this town like Toledo. So that'd be 4 shows a month with the big stars, and they wouldn't come back. But then I went to work for Turner, WCW, as a promoter for Toledo. And I'm going to tell you something, and I don't care if I'm going to step on anybody's toes or what. They had great wrestlers at WCW, but they had totally incompetent management, not managers, the people that were booking the show. They had no imagination. And to prove my point, the same stars that didn't do that well for WCW all went to McMahon, and they drew tons of money because they were handled correctly.
Did you have to deal with Jim Herd?
He was the guy who was running WCW. They would forget to put the promos on the show for weeks in a row. There'd be no promos. Then they'd call me up and say, "Jerry, you're just not getting the job done." I says, if you guys listen to me, I'd give you a $30,000 gate. But I don't know if you're familiar with Wojo or not, but he was a big star in Toledo in the amateurs, University of Toledo, 13-time national AAU champion, NCAA champion, alternate on 3 Olympic teams, member of 1 Olympic team, and the press treated him big in Toledo. When he turned pro, they had huge articles, big pictures. So when I went to work for them, I said, I got an idea for you. As a wrestling fan, you might appreciate this. You see, what they do is they put 4 weeks of just generic promotions on. Then when they get ready for the show, they put 4 weeks talking about the upcoming show in Toledo. They forgot to put any of them on regularly, and nobody would take my calls. But I said, why don't you, on the first 4 weeks, why don't you have Ric Flair come on and say, I think your people of Toledo are finally going to see some real wrestling, me. Not look at the jabroni Wojo, those little small nickel and dime promotions. A guy like me would take Wojo apart. And everybody in Toledo, I guarantee you my phone would have been ringing off the hook.
Oh,
they wouldn't do it. I talked to Ric Flair. He would do it. Ric Flair was all for it. And I mentioned to Terry Funk, who I thought was one of the greatest bookers, and they could have hired him at WCW, but they did not. He said, after a few weeks of that, just have Wojo come out and say, they could say it's a non-title match because Wojo's not in the top 10 of the ratings or something, but the names would have drawn money.
Yeah.
And Flair and Wojo would have been good for 2 singles and a tag, packed house. And then they didn't want it. I said they were doing like $12,000 or $14,000 in Toledo, which wasn't very good for them. I said, if you do the things the way I say to do it, I'll buy the house for $20,000, which means they get $20,000 guaranteed, and everything over that I get. I was absolutely convinced that I'd done $35,000. So they didn't want anything to do with it. Ric Flair liked the idea. Terry Funk liked the idea, but Jim Herd didn't like the idea because Wojo's not on our TV. And I says, you're right. That match wouldn't draw a dime in Houston, Atlanta, or Charlotte. It would pack Toledo. And Terry Funk said, that's what I look for when I'm booking. I talk to the promoters in their towns and ask them what they think. And usually you get good intel that way. So Wojo Flair would have been great, but no imagination,
Absolutely. And WCW, especially around that time, the late 80s, early 90s, was just a wasteland of when it came to, that's when they had like the ding dongs. They had a tag team, for those that don't know, probably just Tim Danko. Everybody watching the stream probably knows about it already. But it was basically a tag team where they would ring a ship's bell to get all the kids into the thing, and they had bells all over their bodies, and they had like these. It was just looking back on it, you're like, what the hell? And from the stories I've heard about Jim Herd as well, no pun intended, he was
a pizza man. He ran pizza restaurants.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's running a promotion for Ted Turner. I blame Ted Turner for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that was the hiring practices they had. And especially since he ran like, I think it was the early version of like a Nemo truck kind of thing. He was a director for St. Louis for a little while, but he didn't know anything about professional wrestling in the slightest. You worked in St. Louis. What was that like?
Well, I worked at the Chase Hotel, which that was legendary. They called it Wrestling at the Chase. And I didn't really wrestle there. I managed there. For Vince McMahon, they brought me in. They bought me these fancy tuxedos and stuff. So this was the match I was fired for. So anyway, they had 4 taping sessions, 4 shows they taped. 2 of them I managed John Studd, and 2 of them I managed Dick Murdoch and Adrian Adonis. And they called
Yay.
the north south, the east west, north south connection. Yeah, Dick Murdoch was from the south, and Adrian, north south connection. Now, I was told by Pat Patterson, a real despicable person. Everybody, now that he's dead, they used to say in Hollywood, nobody really wishes you good unless they hear you're terminally ill. But Pat Patterson was not a nice person. When he came to the Cauliflower Alley one time, I hope he didn't stop too soon because too many noses would have gone up his butt. He was walking around but he was not a nice person. But he, I forget what I was going to say about him now. What was the question again?
So you were talking about managing in St. Louis.
Oh yeah. So he told me, Pat Patterson says, "Listen, Jerry, all I want you to do is walk out of the ring with John Studd, take off his jacket, do what a manager does, get outside the ring, and don't do anything. Don't argue with the fans. Don't grab any legs under the rope. And then Gene Okerlund is going to ask you a question. The entire segment's 1 minute, including the time he asks you the question. So we want to see how fast you are on your feet." And really, I don't think that's a good thing to do because it's your TV show. And if I would have screwed up, like Ralph Cramner, my honeymooners, I'd have gone, hamana. But I went out there and my guy wins the match. And afterwards, Gene Okerlund says, "Why does John Studd need you as a manager? He's a big man. He seems really big enough to take care of himself." And so I remember I didn't even know what the question was going to be. So in total spontaneity, I said, "John Studd needs me because he's too nice of a guy. He lets promoters take advantage of him on his payoff. He has commissioners screw him out of things for enforcing rules that don't exist. With me in his corner, taking care of the business, all he has to do is think about his opponent. I'll do everything else." I think that wasn't bad for, it's a minute. The whole thing's a minute. It starts when the question starts. So
yeah.
So I thought it was okay. We get back to the dressing room and John Studd says, "You're not supposed to put yourself over. You're supposed to put me over." He was really upset. I said, "John, did you hear the question?" He says, "You're supposed to tell people I can't be slammed. I'm the biggest man in wrestling." I said, "Well, if he asked me, what do I think of John Studd?" That's what he said. "Why do I need you?" Every heel wrestler I asked, I know a lot of them, believe me, they all said they would not have been offended if that question was given to me as their manager.
No.
Because a manager wrestler team is a team as long as they hate both of us. So the second tape we went out, and once again, don't do anything, don't say anything. So I don't even remember the question Gene Okerlund asked me. It could have been, "Why do you got a sport coat on her?" But I just said, "John Studd's the biggest man in wrestling. Nobody can slam him." I don't think it made sense with the. So I came back to the dressing room. Murdoch and Adrian both loved me, and they were fine with me as a manager. But I went home, and it was the next day or two, I got the thing, "Don't come back." But St. Louis was, Dick the Bruiser told me, this is before my time a little bit, he says, it was the best wrestling town in the country, better than New York. Every Friday night, they sold out. It was a Checker Dome, I think. I never got to wrestle the big arena there. I just wrestled at the Chase. And they were bringing all the big wrestlers from all over the country. It was amazing shows they used to have at St. Louis. Sam Muchnick did a really great job. And he was president of the NWA for many years as well. And a real good promoter, I'm told.
Yeah, Sam Muchnick. I've heard good things about Sam Muchnick as well. One of my favorite guys, and kind of a person I've we can talk about managers, right? I'd love to talk about this manager. He's a hero of mine and always has been. He's part of my first wrestling memory. Jim Cornette. Have you ever met Jim Cornette?
Yeah, I'll tell you what he told me the first time we met. He says, "Jerry, I used to watch you on Indianapolis television. I wanted to be like you." And so many people say, "Jim Cornette acts just like you. He comes out in the ring with the suits and the ties and he shoots him out." And I take that as a compliment. I'm not saying it's not like Carlos Mencia stealing somebody's jokes. This was just somebody acting like me, and I enjoyed it. I knew what he was doing, but when he came up and told me that, it made me feel really good. And I'll tell you another thing about Jim Cornette that I would like to say, and I hope he's listening.
Oh,
is when we had Bruiser Bedlam, my son Joe was about 10, 11 years old, and he would go get the guys, if they wanted a pop or a sandwich or something, he'd go to get it for him, bring it back to the dressing room, and they'd give him 50 cents or a buck. You know, they didn't have to, but they felt the kid goes and gets something. Okay, now comes the NWA, Ric Flair, the Road Warriors, or the NWA, WCW. And so they start sending Joey to get him stuff. And every time he went for Jimmy Cornette, Jimmy gave him a $5 bill, and none of those other guys gave him a penny. Not Ric Flair, not the Road Warriors, nothing. But the poor guys who were struggling had more sympathy for. I mean, it's just a 12-year-old kid. But I'll tell you one thing: I think he liked Jimmy Cornette better than me because I didn't pay him that much when he worked at the matches. Hey, Jimmy Cornette might be 5 trips to the $25. He wants a beer. He couldn't get beer, but he went pop. He wants hot dog. Joey, go get it. And all those guys wouldn't pay him, wouldn't tip him. They didn't have to, but when somebody does something for you, you tip.
yeah.
That's what but that's a good Jimmy Cornette. And I want to finish it with a famous quotation that I heard. You judge a person's character by how they treat people that can do nothing for them. That's how you judge someone's character. And that's Jimmy Cornette.
A
lot of people don't like him, but I think he's tops in my book.
Yeah. I love him so much. He's I've learned so much about pro wrestling from him, like history wise. His podcasts are amazing. He's gotten himself in trouble, but who hasn't? And I will say, when I met him in Madison, West Virginia, this was 2019. He was a great guy, and I gave him actually a thing to put in his vault in Kentucky, an old Jerry Lawler United when he was the AWA and CWA champion, Jerry Lawler t-shirt, because I just wanted that to live on forever in somebody's wrestling collection that really grew up there too. He grew up in that Memphis territory. Did you ever work for the Jarretts at all?
No. When I was there, Jarrett he was coming around to get his own promotion, but he was working for Nick Goulas.
Yes.
But what he did was what I did with Bruiser. He went and got Louisville television. So Jimmy Cornette's from Louisville.
Yeah.
You don't say Louisville. I used to live there. You pronounce it Louisville. So Jimmy Cornette grew up on TV. And they could take Indianapolis TV came into Louisville, and that's what Jimmy Cornette got it. But I never worked for them because first I was never asked, and secondly, I'd be a little reticent because I heard the payoffs weren't too good, unless you were their top guys like Fort Kermott. I wrestled a lot of those guys from down there because Detroit was much like St. Louis when I started. All the guys would come in from all over the country for Kobo show, and they'd want to wrestle on TV. So in my early days, I got to wrestle with so many top-notch wrestlers between Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Randy Savage, and I trained together. His real name was Randy Poffo. And I'm still in touch with his brother, Lanny. His father, mother, and Randy died. And they have that just low top to bottom. Fabulous Kangaroos, Bull Curry. I always wrestle these guys on TV or the preliminary. And in fact, I'll tell you a good story about that. For years, I was what they call a job guy. My job was to get in the ring and get beaten by wrestler A, who was going to be I was one of those guys. And so for years, people kind of took a liking to me. They come up and talk to me. And they would say, boy, we really like you. You really try real hard to get in the ring. So one day we had a wrestler that was working on top in the main event. His name was Billy Joe Good.
Okay.
And he used to have curly hair like Dusty Rhodes. He used the elbow drop. When he was going home, he's leaving the territory. And once again, like in Mark Lewin and Curtis, he had his car packed he was going to wrestle there, get paid, and go back to Atlanta, where he was from. He says, Jerry, you're going to wrestle Billy Joe Good. He'll go about 10, 15 minutes and beat you with the elbow. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I have never, or I say very seldom complained. One other time I complained. I says, he's leaving. Why shouldn't I beat him? Have biggest surprise upset? Then I'll be good for somebody else. I'd be a good win for somebody. They'd say, hey, you see, you beat a guy at somebody, it's better than beating nobody's. So they thought about it. They said, they talked to Billy Joe Good. He doesn't care. So what I did was I hit him with a drop kick and then ran and gave him a big splash, just a running body press, and I pinned him. Now, Cobo Hall had a pretty good crowd that night, not to see me, but to see the main event, of course. But when I won that match, you could hear a pin drop. Everybody, because this was a main event guy. It wasn't just me wrestling. If I'd been against another job guy, they might have expected. But the place was shot. They raised my hand, and after a few seconds, the place exploded. Jerry finally won a match. And they picked me up and they carried me on their shoulders around the ring and took me back to the dressing room. So they did like me. They wanted me to see. They wanted me to win. They finally got their wish. Later on, I was in Kobo a lot in the main events. This was earlier in the career.
I was actually about to ask you. You mentioned Cobo Hall in the Detroit territory, infamous in many ways, especially with the Sheik being the guy that he is. Do you have any nice wild Sheik stories where like you've seen? And we'll get to riots that you may have had for matches that you had. But like, did you ever experience the Sheik in any kind of crazy riots or anything at Kobo or I can't remember. It wasn't the Expo. That's Indianapolis. I can't remember the other place that Bruiser was on.
He was always going to Toronto too. Then
yeah,
Toronto. Sometimes in and out of Indianapolis. Well, the thing with the Sheik is I started wrestling. He was the first promoter to use me after Martino Angelo trained me. And that was what I wanted to do. And I would have done anything for him. Anything. If he didn't have any money, I'd say, don't worry about it. One day I was in Indianapolis with Jerry Graham. We weren't partners yet. So we just rode together because he lived in Toledo. So the Sheik got in a horrible argument with Jerry Graham about something that happened in Toronto. I wasn't even on the show. I didn't even know what they're arguing about. And the Sheik fired both of us. So he wouldn't take my calls, and I was out of work. I said, "What?" I said, "Why would Jerry Graham? If you get mad at him, you fire him. That's between you and him." Well, because I rode in the car with him, we share gas to get to the town. So the Sheiks had a lot of exciting matches. Riot-wise, there was always good security at Kobo. I don't recall him starting any riots. I'm thinking most of his matches were pretty much the same in his later years. He'd pull that thing out of his boot and start beating the guy with it, and the guy would take it away from him, beat him with him. And I think the best matches I saw the Sheik with was with Mark Lewin. You can see those on YouTube with Eddie Creechman as his manager.
Yes.
They had people up and screaming, but I know the Sheik had been involved in riots, no question. But I wasn't there for any of them. But he had good matches with Mark Lewin would be the best he had matches with, and his classic matches with Bobo Brazil.
Yes.
But I remember one time in Muskegon, Michigan, we were leaving the arena, and 6 or 7 ruffians got around the Sheik, and the Sheik's own son ran and left his dad there. I stayed with the Sheik. This is how much I thought of him. This is before we had the falling out. These guys, 6 or 7 of them, and we was able to talk them out of it. But I wasn't going to leave a friend to get beaten up. So they got beat up, and they both got beat up. But the Sheik was pretty tough, I'm going to tell you. I wouldn't have wanted to take him on in a street fight. I mean, and there was times before we had that falling out. He had an indoor swimming pool in his house. He used to bring my kids up there and take them swimming in the winter and stuff like that. And I was a guest at his house. He treated me very well, and I thought I'd be paid to favor. But then all of a sudden he turned on me, and I had to put that in the story because when he died, and I don't want to see anybody die, I was driving my son Joe up to the airport in Detroit. He had to catch a flight, and a disc jockey called me from one of the local Toledo radio stations. And I had a hands-free, so I could talk. He wanted to know about the Sheik, so I figured the guy's dead. I'm not going to bring up anything bad. So I just said he was a legend. He was a great wrestler. He was everything he did was money everywhere he went, this and that. And I did nothing but praise him because what's the point of saying anything bad? Well, a few days later, I'm working out in Torio's gym, and a federal prosecuting attorney that worked out there was retired now, so I guess I can say his name, Bob Young. He lives in Florida now. He said, "I heard your interview on the radio. You didn't like the Sheik, did you?" And I did nothing but praise him. He says, "We lawyers learn to pick up when people are lying, and I knew you were lying over the radio." But he said, "You're right. You didn't say anything but nice things about him. But in court, we learned how to do those things." So he busted me. So I really don't want to say anything bad about the Sheik, as he has passed away. He did do some great things. I say thank you, Sheik, if you're listening up in the ring, for starting me in wrestling. And I'm sorry things didn't work out better in the end, because I really liked you until things happened. But that's about all I can tell you the Sheik stories. Yeah.
Well, I was actually going to ask you, did you ever see, because there are the legends of him taping blades to like his fingertips and all this kind of stuff. Did you ever witness anything like that?
Yes.
Oh, that's that's one reason why I love the Sheik is he would Tim, he would actually to deal with people or get like to give blood on guys, he would conceal it in like finger tape around on his finger and like cut guys, and he would use it to like get fans that wanted to like kill him and stuff. He's one of the legends, and his nephew, and I think we touched on it after after the Action Comedy Nerd podcast. Go watch that or listen to that episode with Dan Brown and Jerry Jaffe. It's on wherever you can stream stuff. We interviewed Dr. Graham on that episode. I want to get your opinions on Sabu. Obviously,
great wrestler. Great
yeah.
wrestler. That's nothing I can say. If I was going to rate wrestlers on 1 to 10, with Buddy Rogers being a 10, I'd put Sabu around 8.5 or 9.
Nice. Yes.
Really a good hand.
He was one of those guys. I grew up being 31. I remember the heyday of ECW on pay-per-view, and there were about, I would say, 5 guys that really caught my interest. One was Bam Bam Bigelow, because I was familiar with him.
Good big man. Yeah.
What? What's your opinion on Bam Bam?
Never met him, but I loved his work.
Yeah. For a big guy, he moved very well, and yeah. I mean, for 300 pounds doing cartwheels perfectly, it's kind of crazy to watch him.
Did you ever see Jerry Blackwell?
Yes, Jerry Blackwell's another guy.
He was over 400 pounds. He'd throw drop kicks like Fred Curry. You slug him and go over the top rope backwards. I didn't know how such a big guy like that could perform like that, but he was good as they come. Another one for a big man, Jerry Blackwell. Bam Bam Bigelow, great.
Yeah. Shane Douglas was another one. Did you ever work with Shane or watch it, or were you a fan of his work?
He was okay. I never met him. I know somebody that was promoting a match, and they told me that they sent him money in advance, because sometimes when an independent promoter, the wrestler doesn't trust the guy right away, and he said, and Shane never showed up.
Oh.
But he didn't send the money back. It's not like he got sick and couldn't come. At least that's what I was told by Chris Carter.
Yeah. Okay. And then Rob Van Dam, another guy that was trained by the Sheik, was another big guy from ECW that I loved, along with Sabu. To me, like those guys from Michigan in the 90s were the, I would say the epitome of what that style of Attitude Era and all that kind of stuff, even off of WWE TV, were the guys that made wrestling fun for me again when I was about, I want to say I was like 9 or 10. And really got me back into professional wrestling, where I'm like, yes, there's guys like this that exist. Hooray. What are modern wrestling, and we kind of touched on it. When it comes to like AEW, have you seen AEW at all, or paid attention to anything?
I've heard mixed reviews, but I hear that they're trying to do things more the traditional way. And if that's the case, I suppose I should start watching them. I don't watch wrestling anymore on TV, but
count yourself lucky, to be honest with you. As a wrestling
I could give AEW their biggest house ever, but I mentioned it to somebody involved. I didn't talk to Dusty's kid, but there's a guy, you know who Hannibal is?
Yeah, Hannibal TV.
Yeah. Well, do you know his story?
Yes, yeah, it's a tragic story. Tim, I'll tell you the story. We'll tell you the story about this wrestler named Hannibal. He's from Canada. Yep. Has a popular TV or a popular YouTube channel where he gets shoot interviews with wrestlers. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Graham, I will let you tell the story.
Okay, well, he had a match where both he and Abdullah the Butcher were bleeding, and he had already signed a contract with WWE. This is one of his last independent shows. And because Abdullah had hepatitis, he got hepatitis, and they pushed him out of his contract. And really, I don't blame the promotion for doing that because you don't want your wrestlers to have to worry about that. But then they came out with some new hepatitis cures. I know a man here in Toledo that went to Cleveland Clinic and was cured of hepatitis. And Hannibal right now, he still works out. He's a monster, a guy. He's a good friend of mine. And he's wrestling independent promotions again. He's completely clean from hepatitis.
That's good.
And I said he should challenge, what's Dusty's kid's name? I can't think of it right now.
Cody
Rhodes. And he was trying to get it started. And if they would bring, and wrestling fans follow this guy. He's got like 1 million followers or some number. If he was going to wrestle Cody Rhodes at an AEW show, I would think it would be a total sellout.
It would be. That would if the Daily Plaza, where they do a lot of their television for with COVID protocols and all that kind of stuff, you would sell out on a pay-per-view just with that match on there.
Yeah. He's a good hand too. He's not just big. I mean, he's the complete package, Hannibal. And I hope he sees this because I know he's got friends out there, and I'm one of them.
And I am too. I mean, the story of him and with Abdullah the Butcher, and for all the things, which Abdullah the Butcher had a great career towards the end, obviously with Hannibal and all that kind of stuff. That was the start of the downfall. What's your opinion on the legend that is Abdullah the Butcher?
I wrestled him 3 times. He was a nice guy, and he came to Detroit sometimes as a baby face because he wrestled the Sheik. But I wrestled him, and the first time I wrestled him, he dropped that elbow on me, and I couldn't breathe.
Oh, God.
Okay, so 2 weeks later, because he taped every 2 weeks in Detroit, I find I'm in the ring with him again. And he dropped that elbow on me again, and I couldn't breathe. And I was complaining about it, and Terry Funk said to me, "He never hurts me." I wonder why. So the third week, he says, "Okay, there's going to be a tag match. Jerry, you and Hank James are going to wrestle the Sheik and the Butcher, and the Butcher's going to drop an elbow on you." And I told you before, I don't complain much. This was the other complaint. I complained twice to the Sheik. I says, "I'm not going to take it." And what there? And Tom Renessa, I never heard of him. Tom Renessa was a big booker. He was working for the Sheik too. I says, "No, that guy's almost killed me with that elbow twice. First is happenstance. Second time is my fault. The third time be really my fault. I don't care about losing the match because that's what we're doing here, but I'm not going to lay there and take that elbow." And so they changed the finish. And I told Abdul, I says, "Listen, I know it's in your head, or maybe it's not, but I think that maybe you're thinking about if you can catch me down, you can drop that elbow on me before I can do anything. Let me tell you this, that this show is going out live." And it did. We'd shoot one show live, then we'd tape one for the next week, because wrestling was every 2 weeks. So the guys come in early, we're going to go to Cobo and wrestle on the day's show tonight at Cobo, and the next show would be for the following Saturday. I says, if you try anything like that, we're going to tangle, because I'm not afraid of you, but I don't want to mess anything up. So he went around saying, "Oh, better take care of this young man. He's full of piss and vinegar. He might get tough out there. I might need your help." He was joking, but my sainted mother told me that many a truth is spoken in jest. And I'll tell you, when I got with Abdul that time, he really wrestled with me right. So I guess he continued to take the young guys and hurt them, but he didn't do it to me anymore. And I never wrestled. That was the last time I wrestled him too, but I had no complaints. And during the matches, I had no complaints, just that elbow. You know?
Yeah, I mean, especially with the size of Abdullah as well. He was about, what, 350-ish, something.
I'd say around there, yeah.
And he was and a wild man. He was one of the first guys to introduce like forks and spikes, along with like Kevin Sullivan. And I loved his character. His gimmick was one of those where you could look at him and see those. Tim, he used to have these scars that went down his face from just all the matches that he would have with barbed wire and all that kind of craziness.
Oh, he wasn't afraid to bleed. He wasn't afraid to work with Bruiser Brody. I mean, overall, I liked Abdullah. That was just a little flare-up we had. He was always a gentleman to me, nice to me. And speaking of gentlemen, I'll tell you a story that I like to tell. My first time in the ring, I started as a referee. So the Sheik said, we're going to give you one match to referee in Toledo, see how you do. The match was George Steele, the Animal, versus Tex McKenzie. It was a good match, but I didn't know there was a tradition or courtesy in wrestling. When you walk into a dressing room and there's a new face, you go up and introduce yourself. The first person, because I didn't even know about that. I was just first time in the dressing room. The first person to get up out of their seat and walk across the room to introduce himself to me was Andre the Giant.
Oh, Jesus.
Getting back to the character is treating people that can't do you any good. And he treated me great. The whole time in business, every time he'd see me, he'd make a point to talk to me. And I could do nothing for him. You know, he was just a nice guy, but he didn't take any baloney if somebody tried to take advantage of him. He stood up for himself, and he was perfectly capable of doing that.
Oh, yes.
So anyway, when I go to different territories, when I wrestled in the old Georgia Championship Wrestling territory, my first night in, I was in Huntington, West Virginia, and Ole Anderson was there. He wasn't the booker; George Scott was. He became the booker later. So I introduced myself to everybody. I went up to Ole, and he's reading newspaper. He says, "Hi, Jerry Graham," and he looks like this. And he looks down at me. He's the only guy that wouldn't shake my hand. I never forgot that. A slight. People do something that upset me. I remember people do me favors. I once had a wrestler. I don't want to embarrass him by calling his name, but he was a big star with the WWE and WCW. And when we had our promotion here in Toledo, he came down and said that he's between promotions right now, and he gave us a really fair deal to come work on our show. And after a few shows, I said, I probably shouldn't ask this because, you don't want to, but how come you're treating us so well that you come down here and you're working for us at a reasonable rate and it's helping our gates tremendously? And he says, Jerry, years ago in the early 90s, I was just starting in Detroit, and you were a big star then. And you came in the dressing room and you came up to us, all of us new guys, ask us how we were doing, what's going on, and introduce myself and ask how they were doing. He says, nobody ever did that to me. So I figured if you could use some help, and I'm not working right now, I could come down once every couple of weeks and work on your shows for you. So sometimes it does help to be nice to people, because later on, I got a big star out of the deal. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, Tim and I can tell you about that when it comes to comedy. You have to be a bit of a nice guy because you never know. You never know who could take you on the road with you or anything like that, and take a liking to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
Ray,
Angelo Poffo told me, remember the people you meet on the way up because you're going to meet them on the way down.
Yep.
So that was Angelo Poffo. He was 100% correct.
Tell me, do you have any good Angelo Poffo stories that are, because we all know the legends of Angelo, where he was a super cheap man.
Parsimonious is a much nicer word. I would travel with the Poffos, nice people, love them to death, but then rent one hotel room and I'd put the mattresses on the floor, 2 guys per box spring, 2 guys per mattress. They would put 8 in the room, so the room wouldn't cost too much. But I'll tell you something. He had a nice home, and he treated his boys well. He treated me well. I worked with him a few times, and when you're new, it's easy to eat a guy up or make him look foolish. And I was careful, and a lot of the old timers, they took a liking to me. In fact, a lot of the guys, the big stars, would come to Detroit TV and say, "We want to work with Jerry." And I thought, well, I must be a great worker. But Bulldog Don Kent told me why they want to work with you. He says, because you're safe. These new guys will break their nose with a punch, or they'll throw a drop kick and smash their ear in or something. He says, they know they're not going to get hurt when I work with you. And I took that as a compliment.
As you should, sir.
Yeah. But,
it's I want to now talk because I want to get into we have a couple a match that we want to get into, but I want to get into as a promoter, going from a wrestler to a promoter. How big of a jump was that when you became the steward of an entire, your own territory. What was that like, going from wrestling and managing to being a promoter?
Well, I started wrestling after the Sheik fired me. I went to work for Flying Fred Curry, who was running out of Columbus. He made me his partner. And I can't tell enough good things about the Currys. Wild Bull Curry was as big a star as anybody. I'd put him up there with Hulk Hogan without the cable technology, but Wild Bull Curry was something. And he told me once, he says, "You promote your own shows." He says, "If I'm available, I'll come in and work for you. And as long as I get my transportation, a hotel room, and enough money to eat on, you don't have to break the bank with me because I want to help you out." And he worked for me a few times, and Flying Fred and me were partners. And then that kind of fell by the wayside, but I still consider Fred a very dear friend. I haven't talked to him in a few years. I went to work for George Cannon in Canada. He made me his partner and booker, put everything in my hands. And I went to work for Dick the Bruiser. Same thing. After Wilbur Snyder retired, I was pretty much running the WWA, and we were doing good business. But it was not a bad. When I got Bruiser was when I got, just like Jerry Jarrett got Louisville for Nick Goulas, I got Toledo for Bruiser. Then from there we got Detroit, and from there we got Windsor. George Cannon did a piece of the action from Canada, because in those days in Canada you had to have what they called Canadian content on any TV show they had. I don't know if that's still a law or not, but from open to close, a TV station in Canada had to have 50% Canadian content. If the show was produced in Canada and Canadian stars and all that, it was 100%. But if there was American show with a Canadian star, they'd get a 50% rating. That's why Canadian actors had an advantage for TV shows, because like Bonanza, Lauren Green was a Canadian. Star Trek, William Shatner is a Canadian. And that guaranteed them a 50%, because a lot of times they'd show, at the end of the day, they had to have so much percentage of Canadian content. And remember, you might appreciate this as a comedian. You remember, I think they called it Second City Television, the McKinsey brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with the McKinsey brothers?
Yes.
They were stereotype Canadians. They wore flannel shirts, with hats with the earbuffs on them, and they were A. That was started. Hoser. That was started because they used to bring a lot of American comedians into that show, which was done in Toronto. And they said, "You haven't got enough Canadian content." They said, "How short are we? Need 4 more minutes." So they had these guys come up with it. They were making fun of themselves. They were making fun of Canadians. There were 2 Canadians, the McKinsey brothers. They became a big hit. That gave them the 4 minutes Canadian content they needed, because they wanted to bring comedians in from the States as well. And, so, to show you how much of an anti-American law that was, any movie made anywhere in the British Empire, including India, Australia, New Zealand, England, Ireland, Scotland, and any Italian movies were automatically given 100% Canadian content.
Interesting.
Because they were cheap. They get those movies. So basically the law was set up to stop. I had to make George Cannon the executive producer on the credits for our show. We got a 50%. We did well in Ontario.
Excellent. And what we're gonna do now, Harrison, if you could bring this match up. This is actually from the Bruiser Bedlam Best of. That's on YouTube. And
Wrestling's Bloodiest Battles is the name of the tape. It's not Best of's a different tape.
Oh, Wrestling's Bloodiest Battles. Yes, it's the WWE Bruiser Bedlam Wrestling's Bloodiest Battles. And I love.
It is also on the tape Bruiser Bedlam too, by the way. Best of Bruiser Bedlam. I got to stand corrected. It's on. What we're going to see is the Bloodiest Battles, but it's also on the other tape as well. You're talking about the barbed wire match, I assume.
Oh yes, I am a fan of violent wrestling. I'm one of those people that I'm a little bit of a hypocrite when it comes to my wrestling love. I always at least love to watch some blood. I mean, even with Starrcade, or I think it was the Great American Bash 1987, has a barbed wire match between Dusty Rhodes and Tully Blanchard that I always adored. But Tim has never. I don't think Tim has ever seen a barbed wire match before, and I picked this one because he's probably never witnessed something like this, and we're gonna discuss everything while we're watching this. And Harrison, if you could, let's play it, baby.
thing. But this match, the hatred, the tension, and the feud had reached such a point that we just looked at my.
Up, we lost something. Oh no, technical difficulties. Harrison, you naughty boy, you.
And made it legal to use the barbed wire as a weapon as the match progressed. And we
That is a sexy
did
suit,
exactly
sir,
that.
by the way.
So we
Boy,
leave
was
you
I
with
handsome.
this. Here we go.
Yes, sir.
It was the Dr. Jerry Graham coming out to the ring.
Oh, that's God.
Who is your tag team partner here, sir?
Chris Carter.
Okay, that's Chris Carter. Yeah. Yes. I used to love that the heel moment where they would do that, checking the barbed wire. It's awesome to watch this old school. Because what year was this?
This was about 1986, maybe. I don't keep strict record, but you notice most barbed wire matches would take the barbed wire and string it along the outer posts. This, we actually wrap the barbed wire around the ropes. You don't see this that much, but you see how packed the place is. That's
Oh yeah.
I took my cue from Wrestling Education in St. Louis. There's Scott Steiner getting in the ring.
One fall with a 1 hour time limit. Introducing
We're gonna mute the audio as well, I think, so we can discuss over it. And who are these gentlemen again?
Well, the other one is Scott Steiner. He's a big star from both WWE and WCW. His real name is Scott Rex Steiner.
Yes.
When he left me and went up for bigger things to come, he changed his name to Steiner, or maybe they changed it for him. But and his partner is Cowboy Rex Bodie, another really good wrestler out on the range. And when you call his house and answer the phone, howdy. So he really got into his gimmick. And there's Chris Carter and myself. And as you see, you were talking about riots. This is what I call a semi-riot at the end, because none of the fans actually jumped into the ring or waiting for the match to start. The biggest riot, in most wrestling historians' opinion, was in Madison Square Garden when Dick the Bruiser and Dr. Jerry Graham wrestled Antonio Rocca and Eduardo Carpentier.
Yes.
At the end of the match, Carpentier and Rocca won, but Dick the Bruiser picked up a chair and hit Rocca in the head and opened him up, and they started beating the hell out of Rocca. And Rocca was an Italian from South America, so he had Spanish and Italian followers, and they stormed the ring. They had to call the riot squad. The Carnage made, I think it was Time Magazine, but one of those magazines, an article inside. Dick the Bruiser was barred for life from wrestling in New York. Jerry Graham was barred for life, but since he was a war hero with the 82nd Airborne and a staple in New York, they suspended him and gave him a $5,000 fine. They gave Rock a $2,500 fine for getting hit with a chair, and Carpentier had a $500 fine, and he didn't do anything.
And that riot forced Madison Square Garden to not allow anybody, I think, under the age of 14.
I had heard that, so you're the second person to tell me that. The politicians, they got to make busy work for themselves. Really, the question is, should we allow wrestling or not?
Yeah.
Not who could see it. But they got to, well, you can come if you got to be 14. If you're 13, you can't watch the match. Jackie Mason, I go, you're 13, you can't watch the match. If you're 14, then you can get in, you can watch, but not 13. It's always kind of stupid. He's trying to push me into the rope there. We'll get back to the match.
Yes.
So we're being a little bit cautious. I got to admit, it's easy to talk about and do interviews, but it's right there in front of you. I started with Steiner, who was a really good wrestler, my most famous student. I trained him.
Oh, did you? I didn't know that.
Yep.
I knew that, Ray.
At Torio's Gym in Toledo, Ohio, and I booked him his first 100 matches with our Bruiser Bedlam promotion. Then he went on to bigger things. I give him a little hip toss. He kicks me off. We get up. Once again, that's Sam Botek at ringside in neck brace. He was our sponsor. He was the Miller Beer distributor here in Toledo, and a great guy and a real friend of the promotion. We couldn't have done without him. Okay, he wants to throw me into the ropes again in a barbed wire, and I said, nope. No, I'm not going in. No, I'm still not going in. What are you going to do now?
Oh, nice body slam. selling the back there. This is what you're doing a lot. I see this sometimes with barbed wire matches, them making sure that they just don't throw themselves directly in there into the barbed wire immediately. And I feel that's a bit of a lost art in matches like this because it's been done so many times.
Here we go. Now watch this. Here it comes. First one into the
and and you get out of there. Make sure you're just going through. He's getting in gingerly. Just and a back body drop on top of it. That is not fake, ladies and gentlemen. That is real barbed wire they're getting thrown into. The crowd's loving it. You can see them cheering. They're checking the back. This is good teamwork when it comes to professional tag team. Do you think tag team wrestling is something that is a lost art now?
Absolutely. In my opinion, I had some younger guys I was trying to show what to do, and they says, I'm too tired. Because you tag in and out with a tag match. This is a little slower because of the barbed wire. But I believe in tags. It can be strenuous.
Yeah. Tag team wrestling used to be one of my favorites. I mean, I was a big Road Warriors fan growing up.
They were nice. They were nice guys. I liked them. I never worked with them, but I met them, and I liked both of them. Yeah, they were good guys.
Your partners getting annoyed by the crowd. That's something else.
They're calling him traitors. He had been Calypso Jim's partner, and I gave him some money in the middle of the match, and he double-crossed his partner. So the fans are exceptionally mad at him because what they're yelling now is traitor, traitor. Okay, here's Mr. Steiner and I getting back together. Now,
getting a tag
in. Keep in mind, you are allowed to use the barbed wire as a weapon.
Yes.
That clear. You take the guy and rub his head up against the wire. That is legal.
That's like one of the things that I always liked about barbed wire matches is it just added another layer of fun, and it gave people, you got a blind tag there. Your tag team partner came in, and now he's got a headlock on your tag team partner there and tried to push him off. That was a good move right there. Definitely trying to keep.
You're telling a story. It's some wrestlers say you paint a picture. I always said tell a story, and now we're being cautious, but we decided we got to start doing something to win, so we'll start breaking the rules.
Yep.
Go a little cowboy into it. Now Carter gets him down. Now I'm telling him, bring him over here. We got some barbed wire waiting for him.
Oh, geez.
Yes. Here we go. Right into the head, right into the forehead, pressing that barbed wire in there, getting him. Make sure. Oh yeah, get him. I love it. Tim's getting attacked by a cat while we're doing this. He's got his own wrestling match going on.
I got a cat. I'm a cat person.
Yeah. This is a new cat. I've only had her a few weeks.
Good run into the post there.
Yeah. Cowboy Rex Bodie could have been a star, but once again, the big promotions just didn't like him. I thought he was excellent.
Oof.
He lived his gimmick. I mean, he came in dressed like a cowboy. Howdy, this and that. But see, he's opened up now, and so that's our target.
So when the idea comes to have a match like this, a barbed wire match, how hard of a sell is it for everyone involved?
I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
If you're just like, hey, do you want to do a barbed wire match? Does this make sense? Because you know how bloody you're going to get. I mean, is it a hard sell for all the wrestlers involved?
Well, they are going to do it. I wouldn't force anybody. I always said I wouldn't force anybody to do something I wouldn't do. I would do this, but if one time a guy came up to me and he says, I'll work for you, do whatever you want, but I have religious convictions against bleeding. Well, I don't know if wrestling's a good profession, but I respect that. Some people would not do this barbed wire match.
No, there's a lot of I've heard stories of a lot of guys who wouldn't do barbed wire matches. My question to you is, like, when you guys are moving in and out of the ring through tags and all that, how are you guys like getting your legs cut up on the way out, or are you guys able?
No, Chris Carter was going under the bottom rope. There's no barbed wire on the bottom rope.
Okay.
Well, I just went through. I didn't. This. See, what you do in a tag match is what we're doing now. The fans know that Bodie, needs to tag. He's in trouble. The other team is a crowd favorite, and they're screaming for Bodie to tag. And because he's hurt, he's bleeding, and we're more or less tagging in and out, beating him up. And the people right now, if you're a fan, what's on your mind now, if we're doing our job correctly, is that Bodie's got to make a tag. Here he is. He's going to slug it. He's coming now. He knows he's got a tag. No tag for you. You're going to tag me in. See, I go through the middle rope. I'm not a sissy like Carter is, but no, Carter was a really good wrestler, 4-star.
You don't see this kind like, and this is why I like heel tag team wrestling a lot of the time is you guys are doing like you just said exactly what you're supposed to do. I love the holding the leg, trying to get the tag, building that suspense, and you don't see that in a lot of modern day wrestling. We see you just working over the cowboy. Oh, we froze there. I think that was supposed to be a knee lift. We got a little bit of a video freeze here. But Scotty Steiner getting in there though. He's making sure and babyface comebacks aren't really a thing anymore either, which I think
get in, and now you look at the crowd. Watch the crowd for just a second. They're all up on their feet because they knew that Steiner had to get in there to save the day, which is what he's doing. And
yeah, Carter. I love the sell job by Carter. That was fantastic. Good job, Dr. Graham. You worked the donut hole. Fantastic.
Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat. That's a Graham credo.
Eddie Guerrero. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's how you should live your life, kids.
Yeah. Now we're gonna give. That's time for Scott to say hello to the barbed wire.
Ooh.
And just pick it up and rub it across his face.
Yeah. And he's going to be cut open now. We've got some video clipping right now, but it's still, you can kind of guess what's going on. And there's the set. There it is. Nice bloody. What did you think of Scott Steiner in late WCW?
Well, he was always a great wrestler. My feelings were hurt that he never called me. A lot of guys I trained would call me and say Merry Christmas or something. I got put in the Indiana Wrestling Hall of Fame. He came in and inducted me. I don't know why it's slowing down like that. The tape.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably StreamYard. We need to get a new thing.
Watch his head now. Watch the.
I agree with Tim. There we go. It's speeding. It's sped up now.
He's really a mess.
Oh, yes, he is. Oh, there we go. Another tag. And here we go.
Now we're doing what's called feeding Bodie now. He hits one guy and you go to the other guy and you got to be there to take your hit. Now
Scotty's got you now.
Now the crowd. See, you build up to this stuff. You can't just start or they lose it. Call it heat. It's like a bullet. You shoot a bullet, it slows down if it goes too far. I'm out of the ring. Steiner comes out after me.
Runs you. He's going to post you. Yeah. Nice. Excellent post job. The crowd is losing it. I miss this kind of like, that's the thing, like going to local wrestling shows is you would get that hot crowd every month, and you would definitely see that. And you're busted open now as well, trying to get away from Scotty Steiner, and looks like you're pulling something out, and he meets you with the knee. It's darn you, StreamYard. Everything else is working lovely right now. There's been no clipping of anything. But no, this has been a fantastic match, and I like seeing the like crowd reacting because you really don't see that anymore at small shows. A lot of times it's, especially here in Cleveland, we have a lot of, and they're going to post it or going to do a coconut smash here. Let's see if it plays, and they're going to run you off.
Barbed wire, and we bounced off and hit each other. It's skipping ahead like, but you got an idea what's going on.
Yes. Yeah, Tim, I agree with you. We need to find something else.
Been telling you, bro.
I know.
This is the finish of the match.
It's paused. Up. We get a leg drop from
Wojo. Here comes Wojo into the ring.
Oh my. Yeah, the great Wojo is attacking everybody. Is attacking all of the baby faces.
The referee got knocked out of the ring. He couldn't see it, and it skipped ahead of it. He's laying outside the ring. So Wojo took advantage of no referee to come in and throw me on top of Steiner. And here comes the referee back into the ring.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
There we are.
Whatever it's worth, whatever it is worth. That's the first time Scott Steiner was pinned in his career.
Interesting. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Now Botek, he was acting as their manager because we pile drivered him and and it took him out in an ambulance the show before. That's what kind of led up to all this. So Botek's arguing that Wojo cheated. Now, if you want to see a semi-riot starting, if the tape starts to move a little bit.
Yeah, they're throwing stuff. That's something else, like kind
right
of
there. And I can't see, it was John Robinson Block. He's a man that owns the Toledo Blade and Buckeye Cable System. He was at ringside.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, here I slapped Botek, knocked him down. He get up, he tore his mask off, and he starts on me. He played for the Marshall football team. When they all got killed, he was a freshman. They let him start as a quarterback because the whole team got killed. But that was the year before he went there. But he was an athlete, so he was pretty.
Wow.
He wrestled a match. He did a really good job. This was Timmy. Now Wojo comes in the ring, and they're going to beat up Steiner. Him and Carter are shaking hands. The wrestlers have gotten me out of there. It's over. We've won. But there's Wojo, and look at the people. The ring's filling up with debris.
Yep.
And the people, security guards are pushing people back.
And you're just keep going on the baby faces, which is awesome. Getting that heat that you really do need. Oh, I love it. It's so much fun. We can, oh, what a pile driver. That was beautiful. That was beautiful pile driver. That was fantastic. And then now the crowd is really hot. Like that guy in the white hat is not enjoying this at all right now.
No, he was one of our best fans. He come in the ring and he really got into it.
But Harrison, you can pause this and let's go back to a regular screen. And we'll wait for Tim to get back. That I love those kind of old school. And what year was that, if I may ask?
It was in 86, maybe.
Oh God, and that was a hot period for professional wrestling too. Yeah. I mean, especially with Starrcade. There was the third Starrcade. What was it? I think the third was it WrestleMania. WrestleMania 3 wasn't in 86, was it?
I don't know, but we wrestled in Toledo. We didn't even know what WrestleMania was then. We had WrestleMania 1, and then we were in the dressing room and we were saying, Jiminy Christmas. They're going to kill us. We should have run. We had a sold-out house that night.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
1. Well, they didn't have that. They had it down in the sports arena. You had to go down. The cable system wasn't ready for that yet in Toledo. So I'm sure if they could have stayed home and watched WrestleMania, but a lot of people came to our show.
Nice. And I mean, promote. How many shows did you run as a promoter?
Thousands. I can't even count them. I was a promoter for 10 years and a couple hundred shows a year, maybe. I couldn't even begin to guess. It's like trying to count all the women I've been with. There's been so many, it's impossible to.
All right, Ric Flair.
He wasn't my type. Ric Flair's not one of my favorite people either, but we'll just let things go. Most wrestlers I like. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like the guy because he did better than I. I really like Roddy Piper. I thought he was a great guy. I said Randy Savage and I trained together. I thought he was a great guy. And the Funk Brothers, tremendous. The Currys. So when I say I don't like somebody, it's not a bitter, sour grapes. It's not that. It's that they did something or some things to me that I didn't like.
And that's professional. That's entertainment. I mean, you pick the people you want to be with. And I have to ask you this question because you do have I've wanted confirmation on this because I've only heard it from third-hand sources. Is it true that Randy Savage got arrested for shoplifting at Kroger? Do you know that story by any chance?
If he did, I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be coy. I've never heard.
Oh
that
no. I'm not saying you are, but that's a story for a different day.
I seem to think that if it happened, I would have heard about it.
This is true.
This is what he was living here in Toledo, but possibly after he left here, when he left here, they didn't go right to the WW. They had their own promotion in Kentucky and Tennessee, and then he went to work for Mobile, Alabama had a promotion down there. The Poffos, they were the Poffo brothers then. He hadn't taken the name Randy Savage yet. And then he took the name Randy Savage. He went to work for Nick Goulas and Jerry Jarrett. But no, I've never heard of him. He was a crazy kind of a guy, but I didn't know him to be a thief. But I'm not going to stick my neck out and have somebody say, I got the police report right here
Yeah.
on a future show. So I'm just saying, I never heard that.
He played pro baseball too, didn't he, before he wrestled?
He played minor league baseball
Minor league.
with the Sarasota, whatever team's in Sarasota. And I asked
Yeah,
his brother, Lanny, what happened that he didn't make it to the majors. He says, well, he'd go 4-4 one game and then 0-50 in August. That's what Lanny said. I never saw him play, so I can't say personally. But he and I were friends at one time. Yeah, and I have nothing but fond memories of the Paphos, Angelo too.
Dr. Graham, we appreciate you being on the show, sir. This has been one of my favorite podcasts. You and our last guest, John Gunther, have been just a wonder. The last two guests that we've had have been amazing. And I appreciate you coming on, telling your stories. And we'd love to have you on again down the road for sure. To talk about more pro wrestling and all this kind and more wrestling related things. We appreciate you being on. Do you have plug your book and where everybody can find it?
Okay, well, I'm going to plug the book, but I got to do it with a caveat. We had some technical difficulties, and my son Jerry is working on it. One of the tapes it was defective, and the guy closed down because of COVID. And now we got to find a copy of the tape that's clean so we can make new copies because there's 4 cassettes and Best of Bruiser Bedlam. And so people buy it, they get a good deal. They get 4 hours of me telling stories about other wrestlers that I thought might be interesting. And that's what it is, the Confessions of a Big Time Wrestler. And they can go to my Facebook page and probably find it. They can always message me. I give them an update. But right now, Jerry is in the process of finding a clean tape that we can make copies of and replace it in all the books we have in stock. Like a joke I say sometimes, you might appreciate this being comedians. I'll have somebody, I have to have plants feed me my lines. The guy comes to me and says, Dr. Graham, is it true your book is a million seller? And I said, no, I have 1 million copies in the cellar. I stole that from the Righteous Brothers.
But we appreciate you being on, and it's been an honor to have you. Yeah,
great being here. I like to talk wrestling. People tend to forget about you when you get to be old. At least you guys wanted to hear. At least I was able to bore you a little bit.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I bored you a little bit. Good. Okay.
No. We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
That's
as predicted. I didn't have a whole lot to say the whole episode. I just sat back and listened and let you tell the stories. But it's been fun. Thank you so much for coming on. I love hearing these old wrestling stories.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed me because I haven't been in public in a while. I thought I might get stage fright, or I might not be able to think of anything to say because I'm really a shy, shrinking violet. And so I was able to pull myself up for the task. And my son, Jerry, you see the Dr. Jerry Jaffe, and you see these two gentlemen here, be sure you go see them in person because they're funny. I can't wait to see them myself. I can laugh till I cry. What was the one joke I stole from one of you guys? Every time I go to a comedy show, there's a couple jokes that really strike me funny, and then I, of course, steal them immediately. And I can't think of what it was now, so must be stage fright again. But thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it. And have a nice rest of the weekend.
You as well, sir. Thank you. And you can watch this episode on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and there will be an audio version. I will be working on that while I'm watching UFC tonight. Go watch that. We will have the recap of UFC Fight Night Vegas 18 Monday, and we will see you guys then. Thank you again to Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., a legend in professional wrestling, and check out his book, Confessions of a Big Time Wrestler, the audio book. Make sure to catch that, and follow us at Bro Plata. For Tim Danko, Dr. Jerry Graham Jr., I am Ray Hyclack, and we will see you guys next time on the Bro Plata. Thank you guys very much for watching.
Thanks for having me. We'll see. Bye.